This was never supposed to be found. 4 nights ago, I was scrolling through YouTube channels, not really paying attention, before I came across this one. It only had 5 videos and all of them were completely unedited, but there was something about it that made me click. And after watching them, I can tell you this is one of those stories that keeps you up at night. Because what happened to this player through Minecraft is genuinely disturbing. But before we get there, we need to start with the first video on the channel, a new server. The first video begins with our player Lewis941 greeting his friend Mark77. For simplicity, let's just call them Lewis and Mark. Lewis takes a moment to introduce themselves to the audience before explaining that they had been searching for servers to join and had finally stumbled across one that seemed huge, at least according to the description. Lewis walks to the right and stops at a rule board. The first rule reads, "This is a public server where you can't see anyone else." Which is funny because Lewis and Mark can clearly see each other. They just shrug it off like it's a glitch, but the rest of the rules are where it starts to get interesting. Players have to survive inside these towering walls, unlock new sections by completing tasks. And here's the part that really stands out. Disconnections count as withdrawal, render distance is limited to 4, and dying gets you banned. They move away from the rule board and Lewis asks how Mark's day has been. Mark mentions he had a college assignment to complete. They talk about the monotony of their classes, the thought of dropping out, and Mark even brings up wanting to earn money. Lewis agrees and suggests that they should try working on something together before they acknowledge that we, the audience, might be getting bored and finally approach the first task on the server. Obtain 62 wheat for rewards. Seems easy enough, but looking forward we catch sight of this odd player or perhaps an NPC in the distance, though Lewis doesn't seem to catch sight of it and continues with the task. Lewis starts harvesting the wheat while Mark goes through a different section. Lewis comes out of the crops to check on what he's doing, and we see him breaking something in the distance. Zooming in on a frame closer, it looks like a sign. Lewis asks him what it was twice, but Mark insists it's nothing significant and they both return to collecting wheat. The total comes out to exactly 62 wheat and they go to the barrels to collect their rewards, a shield and a crafting table. Lewis turns the wheat into bread and splits it between them, and that's it. There is no mention of the first task being done, but they walk ahead and finally catch sight of the other player. Lewis asks Mark who that is and Mark says he doesn't know. They read the sign of the next game before Lewis says he has to go eat and the video comes to a close. There was nothing off about the first video and I wasn't sure on whether to continue since it didn't look too intriguing. But I clicked on the second video and it resumes with Lewis being back and wanting to play the second game. Mark, however, mentions that the NPCs here feel odd and after a short hesitation he agrees to continue. Lewis goes first and manages to reach the other side fairly easily, but when he turns around, he notices that Mark has stopped midway on the ladder. Lewis asks if he's okay and after a short pause, Mark climbs back down. He assumes it's just an internet issue, brushes it off and goes on to collect his reward. They move to the next sign, which warns them that this is their last chance to gather food. They acknowledge it and move ahead, but this time another NPC passes right in front of them. Mark points it out again, saying these NPCs feel weird. He even admits that he doesn't like them. Lewis laughs it off, calling them funny, and reminds him that they need to fish. 3 minutes of fishing later, they cross a pond and climb up a bunch of stairs, which leads back down to a relatively easy water drop. Lewis does it easily, but Mark misses the landing, only lucky enough to not take fatal damage. The next sign reveals that they've reached the first corner of the map, and to advance, they'll need to fight off a horde of zombies. Realizing their fists aren't enough, they open the nearby barrels, each finding a sword inside, and finally start taking down the zombies. They complete the challenge and come out to the other side. There is this slightly odd moment where Mark pauses and says what, but other than that, they complete a short, easy parkour before Lewis mentions he's going to sleep. He tells Mark he'll leave his computer on so the server doesn't disconnect, and then signs off. Apart from the possible internet issue and Mark's pause, nothing has been entirely strange. Though I clicked on video 3 and it begins with the two of them back on the server greeting each other. Lewis asks how Mark's night was, mentioning that he had to keep a fan next to his PC so it wouldn't overheat. But Mark's response is unusual.
I didn't sleep. I just wandered around.
Lewis apologizes for keeping him waiting and asks if he wants to jump into the next game. Mark agrees, so they grab their shears from the chest and start shearing the sheep. Lewis goes at a normal pace, but when he looks around, Mark is already done. He asks how he finished so quickly, and Mark simply replies saying you need to be efficient. Lewis brushes it off, finishes the task, and they move on to collect their rewards, a set of armor, before heading to the next challenge, titled Punch Enemy and Run. Mark goes first, punching the NPC, and Lewis follows right behind him. But when they reach the end, they realize they needed the wool from earlier to escape, so they run all the way back, grab it, and complete the game properly. The next challenge is the pig race. Each player has to ride a pig and dodge incoming arrows from skeletons. They both manage to make it through, earning some healing potions, before parkouring their way back to the start. Lewis checks in, asking if Mark's doing alright, and Mark replies with a yes. They reach the next game, which seems to be a maze with 2 entrances. Lewis takes one path and Mark goes through the other. After a few seconds, Lewis finds a chest with a sword inside. Realizing he picked the correct route, he calls Mark over, lets him take the reward, and they continue forward. Lewis eventually tells Mark that he has to go take a shower and leaves, but this video really rubbed me in the wrong direction for one reason. Mark doesn't seem normal. His texts are pretty drier than the 2 previous videos, and his movements are also a little unnatural. And yes, this could very likely be because he didn't sleep. But what exactly did he do all night wandering this server alone? It's not like he could progress without Lewis. At least I don't think he could. I might be overthinking, but the only way to know for sure is to watch the 4th video. Lewis seems to have returned. He greets Mark, saying he's back and ready to play the next game. But this time, Mark doesn't respond. He doesn't even stop to type. Instead, he silently turns and begins walking toward the next challenge. Lewis, slightly confused, follows after him. The signs at the entrance read,
Isolation trial. 1 player must remain inside the room for 72 hours. The other player must fight off the mobs around.
And the reward is the route to escape. Lewis hesitates, typing that this has to be some kind of joke, because 72 hours in Minecraft isn't just long, it's unnatural, isn't it? It's obsessive, it's not something anyone could conceivably endure. But before he can say more, Mark says this.
I will do it.
Lewis tells him not to waste time and starts typing what if it's a joke. But before he even finishes, Mark responds.
I don't think it's a joke.
Almost like he knew what Lewis was about to say. Lewis steps back, unsettled, as Mark walks into the building alone. He climbs up to the top, finds an infinity bow, and calls down that there are no mobs here and staying for 3 days makes no sense. He starts typing that he's going to leave and his computer can't stay on for that long. But again, before he even hits send, Mark types,
Don't leave.
Something is not right. Frustrated, Lewis tells him he's heading to his cousin's place for the weekend. He even jokes about wishing they could just play Bed Wars instead. But Mark doesn't say a single word and the video just ends there. At this point, it's clear that something is deeply wrong with Mark. His movements, his messages all seem off. And I don't mean that in a way you can explain. I mean it in a way that makes you feel like you're watching someone change, and the final video might be our only chance to understand what's happening to him. It's been a whole week. The final video begins with Lewis explaining he'd spent too long at his cousin's and that his computer is basically fried. Lewis looks down and sees Mark still walking. He's still online and inside the room. The task said 72 hours, and if a week has passed, why would he still be in there? Lewis types in all caps that it's been a week, and even mentions that Mark hasn't replied to his messages on Instagram. But what happens next is concerning.
What is wrong with you?
Lewis tells him that's it and he's going to break this game, and when he breaks the wall, Mark is gone. It's just an Alex skinned NPC with his name tag. Lewis goes over to where he is standing and finds a sign covered in random characters. But that's not important. What happened to Mark? Lewis asks him if it's a joke, but doesn't get a response. So as a last resort, he breaks the sign inside the building, tells us he will be on for 2 more hours before he turns off his PC, and places the sign outside with a message to Mark. The video cuts to black for a few seconds and Lewis returns to nothing. No response on the sign, no trace of Mark at all. Where could he be? Could he have left the game? Perhaps he progressed without Lewis. There are countless different explanations, but it really doesn't make much sense. Lewis leaves the game and the video comes to a close, but throughout these 5 videos, Mark's behavior changed. He was a lot more talkative in the first and second video, but from video 3, something felt wrong about him. It could very well be a personal issue, but his disappearance from Lewis's or our point of view can't be anyone else's fault except for his or someone unknown. There's no way the story can possibly end here, and upon rewatching the video again, I realized that the sign which was inside the room held an 11-character sequence, and if you don't already know, this has to be part of a YouTube URL. It leads us to Mark's channel, and if we want to know what exactly happened to Mark, this has to be it. The video begins at what seems to be the start of the server again. Mark is playing with the note block, but a few seconds later, something pops up. Maze server, Project Wine. Subject successfully initialized. Protocols are now active. Continue operations under assigned parameters. We don't know what this is, but it's definitely not normal. It unmistakably proclaims Maze server and mentions a subject successfully initialized under something called Project Wine. Right after the pop-ups disappear, Mark's game glitches and then Lewis joins. This is just Mark's perspective of the first video, but as it continues, we notice something different. While Lewis is harvesting the wheat, Mark walks over to the right side and we see them. The signs, the exact same ones he broke in the first video. To proceed, behave as the NPCs do. Keep silent about this instruction. The sign behind the first also says break the signs, which makes sense why Mark broke them, but what does this mean? Behave as the NPCs do, as in literally act like an NPC, for what? And why would Mark have to keep silent about this? It's weird that he didn't tell Lewis at all, saying it was nothing before the video ends, but this raises questions. Could this have something to do with how he disappeared? And could it have something to do with you not being subscribed yet? Oh, yeah, if you like the video so far, make sure to subscribe and like. I didn't know where to go from here though. There were no more videos, nothing in the title, nothing in the description, and absolutely nothing in the Wait, there was something in the subtitles. Yet another 11-character sequence. But who's hiding these and why is it hidden in the first place? Something about this feels wrong, but it does lead to the second video on the channel, Sign. Immediately looking at chat, we notice a few messages from what seems to be the NPC.
You need to listen to us. You must be like us. You need to listen to us.
It's yet again the same second video from Mark's perspective, but how are these NPCs talking and why do they want Mark to be like them? If we go back to Lewis's video, they clearly never spoke, they just walked around, and now it makes sense why Mark called them weird. The video cuts to black for a few seconds before resuming with Mark on the ladder, and we notice exactly why he stopped. It wasn't an internet issue. It was another sign.
Continue. They're observing. Do not break character.
Mark just stops there looking at the sign for a few seconds before going back down where the video abruptly ends. But this time the description did have something. This had to be yet another URL, but it was not easy to put together since it was scattered. I tried this many times only to get nothing before I looked closer and realized this had to be put together the same way the map's design was. LS3 is the beginning, with OB being the first corner, ATH being the pig race, and _E being the final corner they went to, and we get led to the third video on the channel. This video is way more unsettling. It's zoomed in and the glitches have visibly intensified. From where Mark is standing, it's clear that he's right where the shearing game begins. The same spot Lewis logged off for the night, which explains why Lewis isn't moving at all in this video. Mark walks to one side and turns around, but as he walks to the other side, more signs. The glitches get even worse when he approaches them. I mean, take a look at this one specifically, but the signs read something disturbing. He doesn't see what you see. He wouldn't understand. Obedience is the only way to protect him. Just like your family, do you want him gone? This is extremely ominous. Who are they talking about? Why do they want Mark to obey? And most importantly, what happened to his family? Mark starts to get paranoid. He breaks the signs and looks around, visibly unsettled. The video suddenly cuts to black before resuming with Mark still looking around, still on edge, but when he looks back, another sign.
Your only way to survive is to be like them.
Mark breaks the sign immediately and you can see he is panicking. Who placed this sign? Who is Wine? Could they be responsible for his disappearance? Just what is going on? The video ends, but an end screen pops up, and this leads to the final video on Mark's channel. Mark77. Mark seems to be inside that room already in this video, but the player who comes inside, TRCPUL, doesn't show up for no reason.
Mark Lawson, your whole family is gone. You will be next if you don't obey.
Behind this player, we see that he brought along the exact same NPC with Mark's username, but what Mark does next is probably the only reason we got this far. He quickly places the sign behind him and pastes the URL of the first video he wanted us to know, although this player walks up to him and...
What is that? Do you understand what I just said?
The video goes black for a final time and Mark is just left there with this NPC inside the room. We know for sure that this happened at the time Lewis was at his cousin's, because in this video as well, his name tag doesn't move. A few seconds of complete silence pass before Mark gets teleported to this plain white void filled with NPCs who have his name tag, each one of them completely lifelessly moving. TRCPUL doesn't stop there though.
You agreed to this. Choose to be one of them or turn into one of them.
And Mark just obeys. It doesn't make sense. Who is this player? How can he just make Mark act like an NPC? No, not just act like one, but not give him a choice at all. He said either choose to be one of them or turn into one of them. But for what? Let me be focused on this for a minute. TR_CPUL has to have something, at least a meaning to it, right? I typed it out into a cipher decoder and through rotation 7 it revealed this. MK_Vine. Okay, we've definitely seen Vine before, but what is MK? I tried searching for anything online which could help me understand what these two letters meant, but I got nothing. Though I couldn't give up, there has to be something I missed within these videos, so I watched all of Mark's videos. The first had nothing, the second as well, even the third. But wait, if you listen very closely at the end of the third video, Morse code. This had to lead somewhere, and when I downloaded the audio of the video, cleaned it up a little and plugged it into a Morse reader, A link. I wasted no time, pasted it onto the search bar and was hit with this. The Vine control logs and more messages by the player and Mark.
Mark Lawson, everything you've done, all files and recordings have been accessed. Certain recordings are blocked. Your family is gone. You could be next. Life will not go your way if you resist. Compliance is necessary.
Who are you? What did you do to my family?
I'm just part of the Vine project. You're under observation. Follow instructions and act according to protocol. No deviations.
Stop this.
You have no choice. You agreed to this. We control the environment. We control your house too. Your doors cannot be opened. You signed up for this. Do what you agreed to do. If not, you will also perish.
It's clear that Mark doesn't want to be in this situation, but judging by everything we just read, I don't think he can get out of it. Though what's unsettling is the fact that he might still be stuck in the server, because it clearly says session active monitoring Mark L. We also get the full form of Vine, the variable integration neural experiment. This sounds oddly similar to what I had done before, and I didn't want to get in trouble, so I selected it, and before I could press copy, I accidentally hit inspect, and this was something that was coincidentally one of the best accidents I've made. We see the lead director's name hidden in the code of the site, Sir Marcus Hallfield. I wanted to know more about him, so I searched him up on Google to find a single site, a forum from 2017, and an article written by Marcus. The post discusses Soviet experiments where small groups were kept in identical, isolated environments with the same light cycles, meals, and background sounds. Over time, the participants began to mirror each other's movements, speech patterns, and even dreams. Marcus talks about how this suggests that when people are deprived of variety, their minds can start aligning with those around them, blurring individuality. The post implies that uniformity itself can shape thought and behavior, making conformity a natural response rather than just a social choice. This is very interesting, and there is definitely a similarity when comparing this to Mark's situation, but I wanted to know more, and I clicked on his name trying to find something, but there was little to nothing since he was last active on the site in 2018. So I decided to do a random thing and try searching his name on the Wayback Machine, and when I did, something came up. A site called the Human Research Unit. I wasn't even sure if it was related to the topic we were talking about, since it has mentions of neurodegenerative disorders, exploring cognitive decline in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patients. But something had to be here, at least a mention of Marcus. There was a search bar on the top left, so I gave it a try, typed out the name Marcus, and there was something. A deleted record from public access, which took place in June of 2019. The record shows a conversation between Marcus and someone named Dr. Garrison Richard, and I want you to pay close attention to it.
I can't keep doing this here. The projects are dull, monitored, and stripped of meaning. The old research showed way more potential, more truth. We're wasting time.
These methods are controlled for a reason. You know the limits, they exist to prevent harm.
The limits prevent discovery. You can't induce change without risk, you know that? We learned nothing from those trials because you refused to go far enough.
You're talking about the isolation sessions again, aren't you? You were warned before.
The sessions were the only real data we've ever had. Behavior broke, rebuilt, and aligned. It worked. You know what? I'm leaving HRU. I'll build something better, freer, something that doesn't stop where things get uncomfortable.
Then leave. We don't want you here anyway. You're too dangerous. Don't contact anyone from this division ever again.
Reading this conversation, it's clear that Marcus worked here at the Human Research Unit, and they seem to be somewhat civilized, doing projects that existed to prevent harm when dealing with these neurological subjects. But Marcus doesn't seem to like the idea of safety, as he says that they learned nothing from those trials because they refused to go far enough. Although this message by Dr. Garrison, you're talking about the isolation sessions again, could be directly related to what Marcus is doing to Mark. It's clear that Marcus has no limits. That is why he left the HRU to build something quote-unquote better, something that doesn't stop where things get uncomfortable. And now we do see the dots start to connect, because what Marcus created was wine, right? The variable integration neural experiment. I searched the full form on Google to be led to a single result, a site called St. Willow's Medical Center. It looked just like what you'd expect a medical center's site to be, and it even had the location, based in New York. But this is when I realized something strange. The location led to a mall, and I did check. There was no medical center inside the mall named St. Willow's. This was a cover-up site. A cover-up for something incredibly dark, because below the site was this. Internal access. I didn't hesitate. Typed out wine into it, and
connection established. Open experiment wine.
we got something. The internal access to wine. And here it was. The wine maze. This program establishes controlled observation and manipulation of a single subject within a digital simulation to evaluate the possibility of long-range behavioral convergence. The operation uses deception, narrative immersion, and technical intervention to determine if a subject can be restructured into a compliant cognitive pattern, an entity operating predictably, like a scripted non-player character without physical proximity. Primary objective: remote behavioral control. Evaluate whether complex behavioral modification can occur through a purely online environment. Implement controlled sensory cues, false narratives, and coordinated digital assets to simulate social presence and authority. Induced dependence. Embed continuous reinforcement loops that reward obedience and punish deviation. Remove alternative social contact. Fabricate in-simulation relationships that validate compliance. Introduce fabricated losses to eliminate external anchors. Reality isolation. Restrict communication to system-approved channels. Deploy false metrics to disguise solitary participation. Insert autonomous agents posing as peers who whisper persuasive cues urging a simulation, all run by a custom Minecraft server using an altered client and injected runtime scripts. But there's more. One subject only. The server will delist and block subsequent connections after the initial handshake. All this starts to make sense. They made a fake Minecraft server, completely faking the numbers, and waited for someone to join. Joining the server would immediately let Wine know everything about you, since they could download anything through injected runtime scripts. And this is what they did with Mark. We see the pop-up, and the most terrifying part is the fact that he was chosen for the experiment because he joined first. Lewis joined after him, but this was meant to be a single subject experiment. If it weren't for Lewis's videos, none of this would have been discovered. Vine's goal is to test if human behavior can be permanently altered through a fully digital system. It studies whether isolation, misinformation, and controlled social cues can slowly erode a person's ability to think independently from so far away and make them act in sync with the system's design. This wasn't all though. Under that, we see a second document, a personal memorandum from Marcus.
I began my career under the HRU Behavioral Division, where innovation was sterilized by compliance. The trials were cautious, boxed in by ethical review boards and hollow oversights. I watched potential discoveries dissolve because no one dared to see what happens when the boundaries are stripped away. I have studied every archive that mattered.
Marcus explains how he studied every archive that mattered, and some of these are genuinely insane. Archives like MK Delta, which could very well be directly what Wine was inspired by, was a mind control operation run by the CIA, and you can literally read this on Wikipedia under the name MKUltra. It was used to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken individuals and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. Though that is not all Marcus had been inspired by. The Russian isolation studies, with their revelations about the deleterious effects of prolonged social and sensory deprivation on human cognition and emotion. The Obukov adaptation test, which looked into how people could handle and adjust to extreme or unusual environments. drugs all play a role in what he wants wine to be. It's clear that he himself knows that what he's doing is horrible and dangerous because the HRU rejected it. Though what got me the most angry was this. Marcus goes as far as saying that the experiment is not cruelty, it is proof that a human identity can be rewritten by design, that fear and hope can be manufactured from data, and that one mind can become a template for thousands. The maze is not a prison, it's a mirror, and if it is, I will disturb its reflection. We have to stop this. Looking up at the first document again, we see this. This has to be it, the server IP. But how was I going to stop them? Well, I only had one choice, to become one of them. I had to literally apply to be an operator. I lied about qualifications, even saying I worked for some other known organizations like Nullpath and the DNSB, and around a week later I was approved. This was unprecedented. The things Wine had planned for the future are so dark I'm certain it would get this video banned if I say it. But the craziest thing was the fact that I got to chat with Marcus himself. He said he was happy to have me because he was looking for someone experienced with working within the government's secret networks, a reference to the MDS and Nullpath. But this is where I knew I had a chance. Marcus said that wine is highly illegal and it would seriously danger my life if I leave or sabotage. He also said he will be taking a research project idea in Spain today, which meant he's abroad. This was it. This had to be it. I waited till midnight and...